Cheers. When I stopped drinking, no one said, well done. No one. Not one friend. I was so shocked. Oh, they said all sorts of things like, well, I hope you're back on it for my birthday party. And what, you, Gill, sober? You're having a laugh. And oh, for goodness sakes, don't be so pious and boring. So many triggers. I felt judging me, shaming me, dismissing me, even though there was probably no intention to do that. A poll of 1,000 British participants revealed that while 6 out of 10 people at any one time are looking to cut down on their alcohol intake, a massive 64% reported that they are sober shamed by their friends and their family. Wow! And some even report that their so-called friends, 67% of them report this, have tried to sabotage them by buying them alcoholic drinks and thrusting the drink upon them at the bar, even when they've made it clear that they're quitting drinking. That familiar phrase, oh, go on, one won't hurt you. So is it any wonder that many people keep their sober choices hidden, with 61% of those participants admitting that they'd gone to the bar on their own and bought alcohol-free drinks for themselves and not told their friends for fear of being laughed at? That is 610 people out of 1,000 pretending. Why are we all pretending? I had long known that there was stigma in drinking, and I had felt caught in that, trapped in that stigma for years, feeling lonely, loathsome, less than, undeserving, and less than those people who could take it or leave it. I remember so well the silence. I remember the shame. I remember the horror. I remember the hiding. I remember the lying. But it was the silence that I really remember. My silence, fueling the shame of my drinking, glass after glass, bottle after bottle. But what I didn't know until I quit drinking was that there is also stigma in sobriety. So much so that when I had sort of experienced the euphoria and the pride from initially quitting, that I started to turn the volume down on my achievement when socializing with my friends. That stigma was so suffocating. It was pervasive. It was dismissive. Oh, go on. One won't hurt you. And I found myself justifying. Why on earth did I need to justify or defend a decision that I had made for my health, for my self-esteem, for my worth? To show up finally in the world, truly in line with my values. Finally feeling alive and living. I was so proud that I had not only changed my relationship with alcohol, but I'd fully divorced it. I had got that decree absolute through in record time. I had walked away from a toxic love affair and tasted the magical freedom of doing so. And yet, despite the deep joy of a hopeful future, when I discovered the attitude of other people, I just didn't talk about it anymore. I didn't shout from the rooftops about it. I turned the volume down on it. I became silent about my choice. Stigma really is silencing. And all the time, hearing those words in my ears, oh, go on, one won't hurt you. You may wonder when the shame started. So let me take you back to my drinking decades. So things shifted from social drinking and party girl shots of my 20s and my 30s, to shameful solo drinking and hidden glugging in my 40s and my early 50s. Oh, how I longed to be a take-it-or-leave-it drinker. Oh, how I longed to be able to find different ways to deal with the stress in my life. But more than anything, oh, how I longed to silence the voice in my head and to stop lying to myself. By day, I was facilitating strategy sessions for business leaders, and by night, I was stashing empty wine bottles into my neighbour's recycling box. By day, I was coaching clients around their challenges, and by night, I was coming home and pouring wine into a mug in the hope that people would think it was a cup of tea. By day, I was speaking on international stages about modelling leadership behaviours, no less. And by night, I was rushing through the door to get to the fridge to take a few glugs of cold wine before hugging my children and my husband. No superhero Gill with her cape on at night, saving the world. Just Gill, sitting in shame, hiding bottles in her neighbour's recycling box, drinking more and more to stop the silence in her head. My drinking eroded my relationships with my family, with my friends, and with my business colleagues. My self-esteem, it was on the floor. My libido, that had taken a hike. Yeah, and my skin would have lost out in a beauty pageant with an orangutan. I wasn't present for some golden moments with my children. And when I was there, I wasn't really. Alcohol affected my behaviour, my decisions, and my choices. I pretended I was fully functioning, but what a lie that was. For goodness sakes, in the last few years of my drinking days, I was teaching neuroscience to coaches, and I knew from empirical evidence what alcohol was doing to my brain, and yet I chose to ignore it. Now, it's commonly said that alcohol is a depressant. And I want to emphasize that this does not mean that it automatically pushes every drinker into a deep, dark depression. Rather, that it depresses our central nervous system functions. And it always does this, no matter how much or how little you drink. And what this means, in simple terms, is that it slows down our brain functions and all of our neural activity. So how on earth could I be fully functioning when I was drinking a bottle of wine the night before, held in the grip of shame? And it begs the question, how many people are not fully functioning and feeling ashamed in work and at life? A study from Public Health England estimated that around 89,000 people go to work every single day with a hangover. Wow. And that the lost productivity, it costs the British economy more than £7 billion a year due to all facets of alcohol. That is the impact of not fully functioning. So I was one of the people not fully functioning. And underneath it all, I knew it, even though I pretended and I pushed through and I performed every single day. I was scared. I was really exhausted. And yet I kept silent about it because I was trapped in that horror of stigma and shame. I was silencing my very existence. I was eroding any real connection with myself, let alone other people. How could that be okay? So when I divorced the Sauvignon Blanc and left the horror of drinking. The true work to be okay started. To help me accept my past, to deal with the shame, to work out who I was, alcohol-free, and to connect back to myself and others. And I was helped by the research of Brené Brown around shame. And what she says is, if you put shame into a Petri dish, it needs 3 ingredients to grow exponentially: secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you put the same amount of shame into a Petri dish, but you douse it with empathy, then it can't survive. It was learning empathy that helped me to connect back to my alcohol-free self in my new life. Because empathy helps to dilute shame. Empathy gives us a voice. It helps to stop the silence, and it helps us to tell our stories. And then one day, I had a shattering realization that I was part of the problem of perpetuating the stigma around sobriety. Not only had I made people feel bad in my drinking days for choosing not to join in the booze party, but here I was now in my sobriety, shaming others. When I was justifying myself to my friends, I'd say things like, wasn't that bad. I only drank wine. I didn't drink vodka. Oh, I didn't carry a brown paper bag to a park bench in the afternoon. I didn't have a hip flask in my handbag at work or in my bottom drawer. No, that was not me. That was them. Them over there. The others. As if I could change my life and become sober, but they, over there, couldn't. And I was visited by that shame again. I was so ashamed that in my sobriety, after my personal struggle, after my deep healing, during my healing and recovery, and the work that I was doing, that those words could tumble automatically out of my mouth. That I was shaming others by saying these words, and I was keeping them in their bind of silence. So it's time to stop the silence, and I'm calling it out today. It matters to talk about stigma so that others feel that they are heard, that they are seen, that they are supported, and they realize that they have choices to show real empathy. Because we are all others. We are all human beings sharing a short time on planet Earth, connected in multiple different ways as we step into the great unknown of the future. We're all others. We're all humans. And let's remember that every day, all around the world, people are struggling with challenges of some sort. Whether that is about their drinking, whether it's about sticking with sobriety, being sober shamed, or what they're actually numbing out with alcohol or another addiction. And every day, many of those folk will be suffering in silence, feeling disconnected from the world, feeling judged, feeling ashamed, struggling with the stigma of the alcohol experience, even when sober. Imagine a world with no stigma, where every person feels truly witnessed, where they feel supported, they feel heard, they feel seen, they feel loved, and they feel truly connected. What if we lived in a world where help was fully available and freely available? a world driven by authentic human connection and empathy. I want to live in that world. So now I ask each of you to consider whether unknowingly you're carrying stigma about drinking, about addictions, about sobriety, and also to recognize that your nearest and dearest may currently be suffering in silence, desperate for you to give them that hand of connection. We can stop the silence if we start to talk about it, and if we keep empathy at the forefront of all of our lives. So let's stop saying things like, "Oh, go on, one won't hurt you." The author, Johann Hari, says that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but it's human connection. It is human connection that helps us on our path to sobriety and changing our relationship with alcohol. And I believe that it is human connection that helps to stop the silence. It helps to stop the suffering in silence. And it helps to stop the silence of stigma. And I will raise my glass of water to that. Cheers.